Hi again. We're in the third section of The Three Worlds by Nelson Barbour Charles Taze Russell. This section entitled The Seven Heads of Rome. It's on page 22 if you have a copy. The Fourth Empire is not recognized in prophecy until its conquest of the Third Empire. Hence, any governments it may have had prior to the fall of Syria and Egypt are no part of the prophetic seven. Antony conquered Egypt at about BC 30, at which time, and for some time previous, the government of Rome was a triumvirate under three dictators, or consuls. Hence we will call this first head consular. This head fell when Augustus Caesar, one of the three, declared the empire in BC 27. This second, the imperial head, remained until the empire was broken up by the Goths at about AD 476, when the Gothic kings took possession of Rome. This third, or Gothic head, fell in 538, and Rome was given into the hand of the papacy, which thus became the fourth head from 538 to 1798, or for 1260 years. Although the power of the popes was only delegated, a power conferred on them at the pleasure of one or more of these 10 kings, who were to agree and give their power and strength unto the beast, until the words of God, the time, times, and half, were fulfilled. Still, the papal was the only government having its seat at Rome from 538 to 1798. This fourth head was wounded unto death, according to Revelation 13, verse 3, when, in 1798, a republic was declared, making the fifth head of Rome. In 1800, papacy was restored, and from that time until September 1870 was again head of Rome. This restored papacy, however, was not the same as during the 1260 years. It was but an image of its former self. And in the prophecy it is called the image of the beast. Hence we will call this the image head. During the existence of this sixth head, or from 1800 to 1870, the judgment has been executed on the woman. Revelation 17 verse 1. That is, the 10 horns have hated the harlot and have made her desolate and naked, according to 17 verse 16. They have taken away her dominion and confiscated her property. In Daniel 7 verse 26, in referring to the same power as the little horn, it says, "But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away its dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end," clearly showing that the judgment was to sit on that power and to take away its dominion before the end, after which the execution of that judgment by a gradual consumption was to follow, all of which has been fulfilled on the papacy since 1798. This sixth head went down in September 1870. Hence the present government of Rome, that under Victor Emanuel, is the seventh and last. We now make the application of this prophecy in detail. "Come hither, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot that sitteth upon many waters. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness. And I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns." This all, of course, being Revelation 17, 1 to 3. John was thus carried in spirit from AD 96 down to where the judgment was to be executed on the papacy, or from its restoration in 1800 to 1870, during the existence of the sixth head, as the statement in verse 10 demands. Because it is there said, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, that is the sixth, and the other, the seventh, has not yet come. And after seeing the vision from that standpoint, the angel says to him, "I will tell thee the mystery of the woman, and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The beast, this fourth empire that thou sawest, was," as a civil power, or beast, that's in bracket, "and is not," and then he has another bracket, "for under the papacy it had become an ecclesiastical organization," end of the bracket, and then the text again, "and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition." And then verses 9 and 10. Here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. And there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen, 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. These 7 mountains, like other symbols in this chapter, have a double meaning. First, they represent the 7-hilled city, and thus fix the locality of the seat of the woman as being the same as the seat of the dragon, Revelation 13 verse 2. They also symbolize governments or heads of the empire. And while the woman was said to sit upon these 7 mountains, which is literally true, she is also said in the symbol to sit upon many waters in verse 1, and upon the beast in verse 3, which in verse 15 is explained to be peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. Of these 7 heads, 5 had fallen. There can be no mistake about the standpoint of the prophet. It was during the time of the 6th head, and while the judgment was being executed on the woman. And these 10 horns have hated the harlot and made her desolate and naked during this present century. Everybody knows this is known in all the world. And also that the 6th head or government, let's read that again, and also that the 6th head or government of Rome existed from 1800 to 1870. From that standpoint, 5 had fallen, and 1 had not yet come. The consular, imperial, Gothic, papal, and republic had fallen. The 6th, restored papacy, or the image of the beast, had held the reins of the government, and the 7th, that under Victor Emanuel, had not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue for a short space. This last government has now continued as head of Rome since September 1870. And today, that is 1877, more than 150 million Catholics are biding their time, waiting and longing for the auspicious moment when a blow can be struck for its overthrow, vainly hoping for a restoration to Rome of papal sovereignty. While the prophetic symbol demands not the restoration of papacy or any other government, but the rising of the beast itself, without a head. In other words, the peoples and nations or body of the beast without an organized government, and as the next verse will show. And then we're on to 1711. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. This 8th is not a head, since the beast had but 7. It is the beast itself, that on which the woman sat, the one having the 7 heads and 10 horns, as it is to be after its last head has fallen. I will tell thee the mystery of the woman, and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that thou sawest was and is not. And here, in verse 11, the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7. The nations on which the woman sat have been of the 7, and they do compose the body of the beast, and are already taking on a separate existence as the internationals, or internations, of peoples of all nations. He's getting here into the rise of communism in its various forms across the Western world. The reader cannot fail of seeing our present locality in the world's history, and that we are on the verge of great events. And if he will revert back to near the end of the last century, may judge somewhat of the character of the events which are to follow the fall of this last head of Rome, and the ascension of the beast out of the bottomless pit. And they that dwell upon the earth shall wonder, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world. They shall wonder when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. The state of chaos and reign of terror in that demoniac equality and atheistic liberty which deluged France in blood under the Commune, that is, the French Revolution, when such monsters as Dupont, Robespierre, and their class could wield the guillotine and ride the storm, is only a faint picture of the fully developed Commune, or headless monster, the beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit and made war on my 2 witnesses. And here he paraphrases my 2 witnesses as the Old and New Testament. during the French Revolution of 1793 to 1796. And this is all is in his interpretation, their interpretation of Revelation 11 verses 3 and 7. And he calls that the infancy of this same commune, now to be fully organized. The ascension out of the bottomless pit, meaning only a freedom from religious restraint, and the character of coming events can be gathered by what then occurred in France. With this difference, the commune came to the surface in only one of the 10 divisions of the empire at that time, and was soon driven back, while now it is to become a universal scourge. And not only are the kingdoms of the world that are on the face of the earth to be thrown down, but there is to be want of employment, so that there shall be no hire for man, no hire for beast, according to Zechariah 8 verse 10. The natural outcome of this growing want of confidence between man and man. So it seems like Barbour and Russell are definitely anticipating a growing anarchy and the success of communism. And of course there's some truth in what they're anticipating. It was very much there in the 1870s, 80s, 90s, and right up to the Russian Revolution, starting in 1905 and climaxing in 1917. So a lot of this was anticipated by a lot of people, and certainly prophetic interpreters back then. So we wanted to link to Daniel, some videos we've done on the book of Daniel, because much of this, much of the symbolism, the horns, the heads, etc., is all based on specifically 2 chapters of Daniel. But there are other chapters in Daniel which interpret these very important chapters for us. So if we don't master the entire context of these original pronouncements in the book of Daniel, we will be, well, lost in detours. And I think that's the great mistake of Adventism in basing even the date 1844 and 1829 and then 1874 and subsequent dates are based upon calculations, year-day calculations from the book of Daniel. So our Daniel playlist deals with a lot of this. So for those of you who are in dialogue with Jehovah's Witnesses, master the book of Daniel, and we hope that the 32 videos in that playlist will help you. So we've linked to the first one and also to the playlist on the screen. Next, Mystery Babylon, the Rise of Communism, and Armageddon before 1914.